Welcome back to Paths That Cross. I am Marilyn Banks, holistic life coach and counselor for body, mind, and spirit unity, and some even say a life awareness specialist. So it would be wonderful if absolutely everyone listening to this is safe and secure and happy and contented, lucratively employed, and enjoying life to the fullest without any anxiety. Yeah, it'd be wonderful. But there's plenty out there who are walking a scary tightrope right now, feeling the economic pressures, trying to make ends meet. And for those with a bleak financial outlook, it's an open invitation to sheer white-knuckled panic. Money goes to the core of their very basic primal need for survival. There's a lot of fear out there right now, apprehension and confusion. The major stumbling blocks in our life is fear, and it keeps us off track from attaining success. So now is as good a time as any to expose fear and then talk about the ways to cope with them, practically, but also emotionally and spiritually, releasing and letting them go. So we'll be going into fears and tear it apart. How's that? And we won't be speaking about healthy fears or those conscious responses to fears, the ones we need, those that really and truly keep us safe, that serve us as practical and common sense warnings, such as not crossing the street in front of the oncoming bus. Let's move on to the heavies, insecurity and self-doubt, the mix that fear thrives on. Those fears, worries, and anxieties we can, to such a degree, be addicted to, needs doom. We all know the fears I'm talking about, those that we erratically respond to, and fear is an emotional response and has the power to overwhelm us with dire feelings of terror, of panic, with anxiousness and worry and apprehension, with depression, stress, and always it carries impending doom. And then there are those situations where we have absolutely no control over, where we're walking into unknowns, a black void, where we fear the outcome. Could be financial, could be health, could be death of our loved ones, of ourselves. All fear, regardless of the degree of it, can be met and dealt with. How we react to fears and handle them comes from our early years, what we learned and how we learned it, and is the foundation of our security base. It's different for all of us, but it's exactly the what and the how we were programmed to be, what we think of as being normal, what we think of as should be, ought to be, needs to be, has to be, because that was what was normal for us. How we react to fear is how we were taught by example. It was how we were raised to be. And our fears and anxieties are triggered when life conditions around us are different than what we think they should be, don't conform to what we think we need them to be, to what we feel secure with what we learned as being security. And when we were conditioned for fear, for insecurity, for self-doubt, that's what we pull to us in our lives. Why? Because it's normal to us. It's what we expect. It's what it's always been, even when we don't want it to be that way. When we're under stress, though, believe me, we fall back on what we know, on what's familiar. So we hold on to these fears because for whatever reason we need them. And let's face it, when we're really, really scared, we do our very best praying, don't we? Brings us as intimately close as we can to our God. Just as when we were little tots and sitting on the floor, hanging on to Mama's legs while she was working at the kitchen counter, feeling such safety, weren't we? Always needing that reassurance that she wouldn't let anything bad happen to us, and that we were safe. Always needing some validation that we didn't have anything to frighten us. And of course, that she would always, always be there for us. And we learned to form a trust in her, didn't we? Feeling safe, just knowing she was there. Well, at that little kid age, Mama was God to us, wasn't she? So here we are in the now, all grown up into various phases of adulthood, and I say it over and over again. We always have choice, and there are no accidents, and living on the edge of insecurity does serve a purpose, has some payoff, even if it's to keep us feeling secure in what is our programmed insecurity. Sounds nuts, doesn't it? Well, actually, the positive purpose for fear is that it can be a great teacher for us to learn by and to grow from. Once we recognize them and learn to look at them. So we have to ask ourselves, why would we ever choose options that would risk our comfort zone for panic, for anxiety, for apprehension, for worry, for stress, for depression, for humiliation, or for sadness or helplessness? And that list could go on and on and on. Well, how about these? Because we don't have a secure belief in our own self or capabilities, and so we self-sabotage? Or because we need to experience the fear so we can feel the sheer relief that rushes over us when the crisis is finished? Or because we believe we're bad and don't deserve the liberation from fear? Because we believe it's not okay to feel good or be happy? Or don't know how to be, so we fix it so we aren't? Because it's out of a pattern of ignorance and don't know any better? Just a way of life because it's always been that way, so always has to be? Because it's an unconscious way of getting close to God? It could be any one of these, or more. And yeah, there are patterns. But I'll tell you, it's our insecurities and self-doubts and emotional weaknesses that create our fears and our needs to feed them. And the fears they produce validate those negative beliefs that we have of ourselves, leaving us open and vulnerable, leaving us feeling powerless and helpless to fight them. And we are a victim, all right. We end up being a victim of ourselves. Well, it's a battle against the self, and it's one we can fight and win. But we have to stand up first, and we have to face them, and know it's our battle alone, not our mama's to do it for us, nor God's to work through them. And, as does so much of our lives, it's going to require change in our thinking, in our actions, and our reactions, our perceptions and attitudes, and our choices. And isn't change one of our biggest fears? What if we can't cope with it? What if we can't handle it? What if it only makes it worse? What if? What if? What if? Just what is it that makes us feel secure? Is it feeling good about ourselves or of something? Well, what makes us insecure? Do we ever know? And as I say over and over, whatever's rummaging around inside of us is what we get on the outside. And if we are insecure about ourselves or anything, and insecurity is fear, guess what we pull to us in that outer world? Yep, things that will validate that vulnerability, those weaknesses, especially when life isn't conforming to what we think it should be, what we think we need it to be, what we expect it to be. And the stronger the insecurity, the more clout fear has to support it. And we create all those monsters to terrify us. Obviously, we're all different. Some of us are totally secure and completely comfortable without having money at all, and another may feel insecure with millions of dollars in the bank. And some of us are totally secure with bare cupboards and completely comfortable with restauranting and carry-outs, while another can't feel secure at all without a refrigerator popping at the seams and cupboards stocked like a supermarket. Think about it. We never seem to get enough of whatever it is we think will make us feel secure. Can never have enough of it. And so consciously or unconsciously, fear is always lurking in the shadows just outside our front door, waiting to catch us unprepared, waiting for some sign of pending doom. So I could easily go into the whats and the whys of it all, but for now I'd rather look at the beast and talk about what we can do to help ourselves cope, or tolerate it, or change it, or better yet, get rid of it. And don't forget, when we talk about emotional security, we're not just talking about the emotional body, but the physical, mental, and spiritual needs we have to meet. You know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but there is no such thing as security. When we think we've got it, any dire circumstance or situation can rip it right out of our hands. And we can prepare ourselves for what we think will satisfy our security, our needs in the future. But who knows what that's going to be? But in the meantime, we have the power, the optimum of thinking clearly and practically to prepare as well as we can for what we think our future needs. But still, even then, just who knows? And on the other hand, we have a situation where there's nothing we could do about it, and worrying isn't going to do a whit of good anyway. So why waste the energy? So we're back to the original question. Why do we need fears? Do we need to worry? Do we need the anxiety? Do we need to punish ourselves? Do we need to put ourselves through such harrowing stress? Do we need to feel crazed from panic? What do we get out of it anyway? Just what is the personal payoff? And I guarantee you there's one somewhere. There has to be. Just think how much of our lifetime we've spent scared, or worried, or anxious, or half crazed about something that hadn't happened, may happen, but then again may not, or something that is happening, and just what are we going to do about it? Well, hey, look back over the fretting and worry over this last year's, and not counting all the other years, whether it did happen or it didn't, we survived. We're still here, we're in the now, and obviously, in one way or another, whatever we were initially worried about, it's now in the past, and we got through it. And we were able to handle whatever came our way, one way or another. It wasn't the end of the world, and it's not going to be again. We have all the tools we need to handle it. If our fears had their way, we'd have been dead or more a long, long time ago. Well, let me ask again, do we need it? Especially if we're depending on it to keep us secure because they're so deeply ingrained into our security base. Regardless of what it's telling you, security is not in fear's nature. I'll be the first to say it. It's not easy meeting fears. But we feel so much better the instant we commit to doing it. And I mean literally. We muster up that courage. Guess what? We begin to feel hope again. Hope. And we've taken fear's power away with that. Actually taking it back. Because it was ours to begin with. And the fears disappear. As do all illusions. So let's begin right now. Look at those fears head on. Ask out loud, just what is the worst that can happen? You're not asking the fear, you're asking yourself. And at that moment, you are coming clean with you. What is the worst that can happen? And from that moment on, you can form a plan. The big self part of you that knows exactly what you need to do. And that's what you've been running from. You've been running from taking the responsibility for your decisions and your choices. And even by not making one, you've still made the choice not to make one. And by meeting your fears, you take charge. You take control of your life and your future from that point on. And what if it's one of those situations or circumstances when there is little in your control that you can do to change it? Something unpredictable, change you have to deal with. And your options aren't good and you fear it, but you need to face them and you take the priority option. And then it's about coping, taking it as it comes, one day at a time, and staying in the now, doing everything that can be done. It's that being overwhelmed that does us in. So when we talk about coping, we need to understand some fundamentals about fear. First of all, fear is our imagination. It's an illusion and not reality. It's an emotional vampire that feeds off of itself and is prolific enough to reproduce more and more of it, and only worse. Fear is never in the now, is always in the future. So, the answer is, on the physical and practical side, do what we need to do in the moment, at the time. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate, which only makes it all even more overwhelming. And when you take care of the moment, you're taking it as it comes and waiting for the next one. Stay out of the future, even the next minute, next hour, tomorrow, next year, next whatever. Next. The future is out there someplace, on another dimension, literally. It's an unknown and will be until it's in the now. And as long as it's in our future, all of that data and information that we need to make our good choices and decisions isn't available, hasn't even been created or manifested. So how can it be predicted? Guess that's why hindsight's vision is 20/20, clearly recognizing the picture after the puzzle's been put together. It's standing up to our fears and walking through them that we gain the courage to do what we need to do. And that's when our strengths emerge. Strengths we may not have been aware that were within us. And if we were, we can pick them back up again, brush them off, and call them ours again. And when we work the emotional and spiritual side, begin by asking, just what is it we're afraid of in our life? What is there to fear within ourselves? Can we not depend on who we are to do what we need to do? Can we not trust in the self to know that we are not going to miss or fall backwards on this path that we chose to learn from? This is Earth, and let me tell you, Earth is fear-based, and we have to deal with what comes with it. No question about it. So, as I've also said before, there are ways to cope with fears, to help us stay calm, to help us keep centered, to help our thinking stay clear, to help us keep it in perspective. We can help ourselves cope with fears and even disperse them with silence. Yeah, silence. By stilling the mind, by shutting out the noise, shutting out the nagging, the harping apprehension. And it starts with getting quiet. I am safe, I am protected, I am secure in myself. And as simple as that sounds, you'll feel yourself calm. Yes, you will. You'll feel it. Because it works. Check me out on my website, always the counseling, the coaching for body, mind, and spirit unity. And with that, slow down and take a deep breath and reflect on the good that's all around you. Peace be with thee, O beautiful ones. Life is good, and all is well, and so it is.